Hello everyone. For this recipe we'll be making the Asian stew, and we're going to want to start this first because the chuck roast takes a long time to tenderize. So we're going to start with this. And so right now I have my chuck beef, which is already seasoned with salt and pepper. I have my onion and jalapeno, my soy sauce, water, and sugar mixture, and then my garlic and ginger, my apologies. And that is what we're going to be starting with because that's just the first step. So I'm going to be heating up the oil in the pan first, and you want this to be very hot so that way we can sear the meat. And if you have a bigger pan like this, it's perfect, but if you have a smaller pan, just don't overcrowd it. If you have to do it in batches, that's totally fine. But my pan is already pretty hot, so I'm going to start off by searing my meat. And again, don't want it to be crowded, so I'm going to spread this out a bit. I've already taken off a lot of the fat. Mine didn't come with too much, but if yours does, just trim it ever so slightly. And you're going to sear this until it's nice and golden brown on the bottom. And then after it's golden brown, you're going to want to flip it. Okay, so I'm cutting through this video a lot, so if it seems like it's going really fast, it's because I'm cutting in and out. So as you can see, I've got a nice sear on the first side. So now I'm going to flip over all my little pieces so that way they can evenly brown on both sides. These little pieces are going to be done cooking in like 2 seconds. There we go. And now we'll let the other side sear. Okay, so now that both sides are seared, you see it's got that nice brown crust on it. I'm going to take all of these out and add it to my soy sauce and water mixture. And that is basically just to slightly marinate it and get it a little bit more flavor. So that little cup is overflow. If you have a bigger cup, it'd probably be more preferred, but that's what I have to work with. And so there's pretty much enough oil still in the pan, so we're going to add our onion and jalapeno. We're going to turn the heat down to medium. And just kind of, excuse me. We're just going to cook these till they're tender or softer. Use a wooden spoon, don't use metal. And for your jalapeno, you can keep the seeds in if you want. I personally don't like the seeds. I am not a spicy person. But if you want that little extra bit of heat, go ahead. Okay, so as you can see, the onion has picked up a lot of the color from the pan, and this has been going for about 2-3 minutes so far, so they're almost there. But a lot of the fond that was off the bottom, you can kind of see at the end of my spoon, the onions will pick up, and that's just basically extra flavor, so don't worry about it. Don't scrape it, scrape it off into the onion, but don't get rid of it because it is a flavor booster. Okay, so my onions and jalapeno are about ready, so I'm going to add in the garlic and ginger. And I basically only want to cook this for about 30 to 45 seconds because I do not want it to burn. Garlic's a horrible flavor when it's burned. I think ginger does too. I'm sure nothing tastes good burnt, but... So we're just going to let this cook for a little bit, let it saute, and then we'll add our meat in, and then we'll start on our roux. Little tip, don't stand directly over it because with the jalapeno, the ginger, and the garlic, it will make you cough like crazy. I've learned this the hard way. Okay, so it's been about 30 seconds, and I'm going to turn my heat back up to high. Make sure to do this a little bit before the end of your garlic's cooking period so it doesn't burn. And now I'm going to add in my soy sauce, meat, water, sugar, all that good stuff. In there. Okay, spread the meat around. So it should look like this. You got your little piece of meat floating around, all your vegetables. And right now you just want to scrape the bottom as much as possible. Just get any of the extra fond off the bottom. Again, more flavor the better. And so we're going to bring this up to a boil, and then we're going to simmer it for about 3 hours. Okay, so we're going to let our stew simmer for just a little bit, and boil for a little bit. And while it's boiling, we're going to work on our roux, which we're going to add to thicken the stew. So I've got 1.5 ounces of butter, which I'm going to melt down in this pan, and then I have my 1.5 ounces of flour. And so once this butter is melted, we're going to add the flour, and then we're going to toast it for just a couple minutes till it becomes a blonder, almost light brown color, and then we'll add it into our roux. Not roux, the stew. Okay, so now that my butter is fully melted, I'm going to add in my flour around my wooden spoon. I'm just going to mix that in until the flour is no longer lumpy. Basically, you don't want any like chunks of flour or chunks of butter. You want it all evenly combined and incorporated. This pan is not helping. There we go. And so now we're just going to cook this down for a little bit until it becomes a little more brown color. And it'll smell a little nutty. It'll have a way better aroma. It won't just smell like raw flour. Okay, so the lighting in my house is doing this no justice, but it has achieved a much darker brown color. Cannot see it through the camera, but if you are unsure, you can just ask me while you're cooking. But basically, it's supposed to be a little bit darker brown. And so now we're going to add bits of this into our, don't spill like I just did. Add it into here, and you're going to want to stir it in quickly so it doesn't lump up too much on you. If it does lump a little bit, it'll dissolve eventually because the butter will. We're just going to keep taking bits of this, adding it into our stew. And don't add it all at once because it could become too thick. Like, if you've been boiling it for a little bit longer, then it will become too thick. But just add it until it becomes a little thicker than this. A little bit more, and see if I get the desired consistency. Let's see. About right here is where you want it because it will thicken as it simmers. And if it ever gets too thick, you can always just add a little bit more water. And if it starts getting a little too bland, just add a little bit more soy sauce. It's going to go by taste. But this is about the consistency you want it for right now. Okay, so I just put my stew on simmer. It's already thickened up quite a bit. So I might add a little bit more water. And as it's simmering, it's probably better to have a lid. I don't have a lid for this big of a pan. But if you don't have a lid like me, just make sure you're watching it. Don't let it get too low on liquid because it will burn. Won't taste good. But if you have a lid, again, just watch it. Make sure it doesn't get too low. But just let it kind of simmer now and let it relax. Okay, so while the stew is simmering, we are going to work on our white bean patty appetizer. And so you have your 2 ounces of white beans, which you're going to rapidly boil for an hour instead of soaking them because we do have a lot of time on our hands. And so I put a decent amount of water in there. I really don't think it matters as long as there's more water than bean. And so you're going to see this trying to jump around because it's going to start boiling. But boil this for about 40 to 50 minutes or until the beans are soft. Okay, so my beans are still going. It's been about 45 minutes. Can't really see them in there, but they're still pretty hard, so I'm going to let those keep going. And off to the side, I have my onion, cauliflower, cabbage, carrot, and radish mixture, and I put some salt and pepper on it. And that is going to be for the patties. So once the beans are done, we'll drain them, put them in here, mash it all together with the breadcrumb and egg, and then we will fry those up into the patty shapes.